The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host, guest, random reptoid, or chupacabra may not necessarily reflect those of AM 950 Radio, its affiliates, or its sponsors. Now, it's time to step into the unknown. There are things people experience but never talk about. A shadow moving in the corner, flickering of the lights, a disembodied voice. We invite you to talk with us. Share your story, share your experience, because this isn't just your story, this is our story. This is GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun.
And this is GhostBox Radio on AM 950, where every night we talk about the paranormal, ufology, Bigfoot, and so much more. My name is Greg Bakun. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. You know, I hope everyone had a great weekend. I think it was over here. It wasn't too bad weather-wise, was it? It was all right. I hope everybody had an opportunity to go out and see the new Exorcist film, Exorcist Believer. We talked about it enough last week. Hopefully some of you went out to see it. If you did, put in the comments. I'd like to know what you thought of it if you hadn't gone to the advanced screening. Funny enough, I was talking with somebody who's going to be a guest this week, and she wanted to talk with me before deciding whether or not she wanted to come on or not. And she said to me, you talk an awful lot about demons. And I'm like, well, you did get us on a bad week or a good week, depending if you like demons or not, because we were promoting a lot of Exorcist Believer. And yeah, we do talk about demons quite a bit around here, but, not as often as all that. I mean, it's not that bad, is it? So I got to give a disclaimer first before we bring on our guest tonight. First of all, if you don't like the subject of how people die, such as stars or anything like that, or talk about personal artifacts and maybe in a gossipy sort of way, and talk about just maybe things that might be a little bit you might consider distasteful, maybe tonight's not a good night to listen to the program. I'm full disclosure, I'm a huge fan of all that. I have been for many, many years, and that is why I am so excited to have my guest on tonight, because I've been a huge fan of his work for years. We've talked a number of times, and it's just so much going on with him, and it's going to be fun to catch up because I feel a little out of touch. Tonight, my guest is Scott Michaels, and you may know him from his website, findadeath.com, his brand, Dearly Departed. He has a YouTube channel. He does a podcast. It is, and Scott can correct me if he wants, because I was trying to think, like, what does he do? And he talks about, he talks about celebrities, how they passed. He talks about the way that they live their life, and sometimes that life isn't always going to be pretty. It's not what you would see in the papers or anything like that. This is the real way that some of these people have passed, and I think most people, even if they don't want to admit it, they find this extraordinarily fascinating. So, Scott, welcome to GhostBox Radio. How are you tonight?
Doing great, Greg. Thank you so much for having me along.
Well, thank you for being on. First of all, amateur AM over here. Okay, let's get that out of the way. I must have sent you the wrong link to join us, first of all. So I appreciate you hanging out in a room by yourself, a virtual room by yourself for I don't know how long, but I'm glad we were able to get it all figured out.
It's all good, all good.
Just how it works over. That's why I call when I'm over here by myself. I just call it amateur AM. So first of all, Scott, am I on the right track of how I described you in terms of what you do?
Tasteless?
No. It's just that the conversation can be tasteless. Some people can consider it tasteless. I want to kind of negate that, because if that's the case, then I'm tasteless as well.
Well, yeah, I guess I've made a living. Somebody described my tour business as taking a vacation in other people's misery. I just sort of tell the ends of people's biographies. That's what I've assembled since the 80s is when when I started doing this full time. And so I just sort of zag with the zigs, and now I'm all online instead of being in a van on the streets of Hollywood.
And the thing I find very interesting about it too is, um, because I was thinking about this as well in my drive over today, was there's a lot of people who collect uh, certain aspects of stars' lives, or they collect information or whatnot. But you've also had uh, the luck of being a part of different, like that you can actually walk the walk, talk the talk. And what I'm talking about is, I think in one of your dearly departed podcasts, talking about a night that you had dinner with Roger Moore. And it's stuff like that where it's just like you're not just collecting the stuff, you kind of immersed yourself in this world very much.
Yeah, it's funny that, yeah, I do have good stories, and I've had a lot of good experiences, and I've met a lot of really unusual people, and I've sort of made myself into those things. You know what I mean? It wasn't. It sort of it worked. Like the dinner with Roger Moore. It just so happened that my ex was working on a television program, and we ended up doing that night.
Mhm.
Pardon me. It was all very organic, but I've always found it kind of easy to insert myself into those things, like going to Phyllis Diller's house, and on my way home from Phyllis Diller's house after getting one of her paintings and having a great picture taken with her, having a nice conversation, then going to the hotel where Divine died and stealing the door from the room that Divine died in because they were tearing down the hotel. So yeah, I guess I've always went head first into these things. I've never really been shy about it.
And what is it that you find is so addictive about that? I mean, and it's really hard to pinpoint because there are different facets to this, but I guess maybe the whole thing about knowing how these stars die, going and getting the those pieces of hotel rooms or houses or whatever else. What is it that drives you to want to do that?
It's funny because these people are celebrities, are our royalty here in America, and we all know who Clark Gable and Frank Sinatra were, and Divine and Pee Wee Herman and all those
Mhm.
people. But we see them on the screens, and we're sort of falling in love with them or in hate with them or whichever it is. And it seems like they're so untouchable. But when you realize they are just human beings, and being able to have normal conversations with them, and knowing that they, uh, you know, this is not my focal point nearly clearly, but it's like they go to the bathroom like we do. They bathe like we do. They eat like we do, and that's sort of the weird balance with me. Is I like the normalcy about the immortals. It's an odd thing, but that's like some of my collection now. I have the sink from Lucille Ball's house. It's just such a weird thing to have, but it makes her a human being, yet she's still a superstar. So I love that, being able to sort of, picture them as normal people,
and
but they're
and
not.
and they're not, and that is such a kind of a strange place to be, because I know exactly what you're saying. When I'm reading about on findadeath.com, and I'm reading about, first of all, I can read about how all of the cast of I Love Lucy died. And with that, it does, it reminds you of the struggles, and it's not one to laugh at or take any sort of solace in, at least when it comes to Lucille Ball, but it was more of one of, that she got very ill, and she, people thought that she might have pulled out and she didn't. I mean, but these are real. This is stuff that might sound odd to say, but it does need to be recorded somewhere, somehow.
Yeah, it is a that is a way of memorializing these people,
Mhm.
is recording in that way. And I've always been one that sort of spoke in my mind about things, and I also believe that these people, whomever they may be, their reputations are part of their lives and of their deaths. So, like for instance, I don't set out to be nasty about anyone, but if
No.
a person was nasty when they were alive, that doesn't make them not nasty now. I'll call them
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
and it's not picking on people who aren't there. It's just a fact. Some people write biographies. Well, I write the ends of people's biographies, and if I think they're a jerk, if I've had experiences with them and I know they are, it doesn't mean they're not. So I'll call them out.
Well, and it's I mean, that's probably where the first place I ever really learned about the type of person, say, Paul Lynde was,
Yeah.
or Richard Deacon was. I mean, I put those two together because they have that story about having drinks and people, and part of your site, at least when we're talking Fine to Death, is partially also successful by the people who add to the stuff that you write with their experiences that they've had with those people as well, which makes it even more of a
Yeah.
human experience.
Yeah, definitely. And when I opened up my museum in Hollywood, people contributed that way too. So yeah, their thoughts, their feelings, their experiences, like you mentioned the Paul Lynde and Richard Deacon thing, to clarify or just to there was I forget what the story was or who that was about. Must have been about Paul Lynde, and then someone sent in the story about how. Was it Richard Deacon, Paul Lynde, and Nancy Walker were
It
having
was Nancy
drinks or
Walker.
something?
Yes, it was Nancy Walker.
And yeah, and just waved a drink, waved over to them and said hello, and they invited him over to have a drink, whomever it was that sent me that information. And it's nice to know that side of them. It's nice to know that somebody had such a lovely experience with them that we wouldn't have known about. And what a pair, what a trio of people to put together. And that those are the fun facts. It's always I like to discover the facts that I didn't know about the people I thought I knew everything about. Yeah.
And the thing about that too, I'm just thinking about Paul Lynde, and the type of person he was, and you're dealing with somebody who was living in a time that homosexuality wasn't really well accepted. And so it's like there might be some stories about him that were maybe putting him in a bad light, but it was also very contextual as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
That about what he had to deal with being a big star. They kept trying to put vehicles in front of him to star in. They're not working really, apart from Hollywood Squares. And yet I mean, there's just that there are multiple layers to the stories of these people.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not always pretty, and I don't
No,
set out to trash people,
no.
but it's interesting to know that side of them because it's an important side of them. We can stay, we can read the Internet Movie Database for their list of their credits,
Yep.
but I want to know who they're like, and I want to know what they're like, and Paul Lynde in particular, had an issue with substance abuse, with alcoholism,
Yeah.
and everyone loved him, but when he drank, he became ugly, really an ugly drunk, but he said some pretty funny things too. He was a very clever drunk. So, it's just interesting. So there's a side, there's a side that people don't normally see.
And I've been, and I'm trying not to zigzag too far out of the place here, but it's very exciting to talk to you. In fact, I got to say, you got a number of people here who are really big fans. Heather is fangirling so hard. Or I mean, she doesn't actually say which one of us. I mean, but I'll assume it's you, maybe, but
Oh, Heather, that's so cool. That's very cool.
we got a bunch of them. It's nice to see people excited about you coming on, and I'm very excited to have you on as well. And there's as for those of you who had followed him or don't really know what Scott does. I mean, one of the areas that I go to is Find a Death. Even is it being updated, or is that kind of moved along a little bit?
Yeah, it's fallen to the wayside. Lots of projects sort of have. It just I got involved with sightseeing, and now I'm YouTube, and it's sort of like I'm just a guy, and there's all these different things that I'll do a podcast. I have to do this video. I have to do, and I like doing all those things, but it's really hard to. I can't compartmentalize, and I have so many things to do that I can't do anything. And that's a real problem for me. But they still exist. They're all still there. They're just they've been neglected by me.
Well, and do you see a point that there is a certain era of Hollywood and stars that once they are dying out more and more and more, that your interest in current stars dying or something may be less impactful for you, or does
Oh
it just
yeah,
is
I
it
don't care almost about anyone. That's there are so many cookie cutter people out there. There's no distinction.
Yeah.
And I can appreciate performances and actors, but yeah, there's no real personalities anymore. And it's a very vague, sweeping statement,
Yeah.
clearly, but I find it difficult to get excited about anybody, really. There's not a lot of people I would say, "Ooh, I'm going to go to see that because so and so is in it." Not anyone that's under the age of 70, anyway.
And I have to assume too, to a certain degree, that it's kind of odd how that is almost mimicking what Hollywood itself has become as far as like physical buildings, like
Yeah.
all the stuff that has been so iconic or has been around for so long is being torn down and being other stuff being put in its place.
Yeah, I mean, it's just lazy. It's funny. I was just watching tonight. Troy and I were watching Hell's Kitchen and
Mhm.
Bar Rescue, and I love those shows. I eat them. I love those shows so much. But yet I'm thinking, this is just reality. This is just contest. It's cheap entertainment, but I really enjoy it. But there's not a lot of care put into entertainment so much anymore as reality, and that's sort of sad. And that contributes to the lack of there being any real standouts, in my opinion. Again, I'm not, I don't go to the movies that much anymore.
Yeah.
So and I stopped my Inquirer and I stopped my Globe subscriptions because the people were just like, I don't know who these people are anymore.
Absolutely. Now, Scott, you and I didn't have a chance to talk beforehand. Is it okay if people in the chat ask you any questions?
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, that'd be great.
All right, folks, go ahead, put some questions in the chat, and we're going to ask those. What we're going to do, let's go ahead, take our first break. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Scott Michaels, Dearly Departed podcast, as well as Dearly Departed YouTube channel, and we're going to have a great conversation. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. This Wednesday on GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun, tune in for one-question readings with the highly acclaimed psychic medium, Refined Divine, who can answer questions about love, life, and connecting with past loved ones. Get a potentially life-changing reading by calling.
I can answer the question I've had all my life.
Delve into the exceptional talents of Refined Divine at refinedivine.com and experience her live Wednesday at 10 p.m. for psychic medium Refined Divine on GhostBox Radio.
Magus Books, your multicultural spiritual supply store. Stop in and expand your horizons with books, classes, readings, and supplies at magusbooks.com or in our shop at 1848 Central Avenue Northeast in Minneapolis. From the best incense to beautiful statues, we have supplies and books for your spiritual explorations. Come in and chat with our knowledgeable staff and get what you need for your next adventure, whether you're fighting ghosts or opening your third eye. Check us out today at magusbooks.com.
Reach your highest level of consciousness and well-being with metamorphosisconnections.com. Metamorphosisconnections.com is an online directory of the best holistic and metaphysical practitioners to help you make your most informed choices. You can search metamorphosisconnections.com for classes, events, wellness and life coaches, plus metaphysical products and shops. You can also search for a wide array of healers from all modalities, including EFT, sound healing, energy healing, light therapy, ancestral healing, shamanic healing, reflexology, past life regressions, hypnotherapy, yoga, and more. And if you're not sure where to start, the search feature on metamorphosisconnections.com is tailored to help both those who know what they are looking for and those who are just starting. Come explore the possibilities for your higher self by visiting metamorphosisconnections.com. Their experienced practitioners can guide both beginners and those that are already on their spiritual journey. That's metamorphosisconnection.com, your link to direct you on your spiritual transformation.
And join me this weekend, October 14th, for the Witchy Weekend on the St. Croix at the American Legion, 491 in Bay Point, Minnesota. That's from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. You can get tickets on Eventbrite. Just look up Witchy Weekend on the St. Croix. I will be speaking there this weekend, and I am very excited about that. As it's always nice to be able to speak. I'm going to play some of my evidence recordings that I have and other stuff, and I'm really looking forward to that. I'm very happy right now. I have with me Scott Michaels, Dearly Departed podcast, Dearly Departed YouTube channel. A lot of great content. Also, check out findadeath.com. Yeah, I mean, Scott said that he hasn't updated it recently, but there are hundreds of people to look up and read about on there. And Scott, do you want to take some questions and see what's out there?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. Happy to, Greg.
Let's do it. First of all, because I have lots of questions, but I think I'd rather have some of these fans who keep saying stuff like Scott's the best guest and has so many wonderful stories to share. The chat has just been filled with all of that. Heather does ask, did you know that Tiny Tim is buried in Minneapolis? I think he's actually buried in this radio station, as it happens. No, he's not.
Well, actually, I do, because I have the receipt from his grave purchase that his widow had. I actually got the cemetery receipt for payment of Tiny's grave. So yeah, I am familiar with that one. Thank you.
How do you have this? Why do you have this? I love it.
That was a donation, actually, because I love Tiny Tim. I have a lot of Tiny Tim memorabilia. And there was someone who was friends with Tiny Tim's widow and said, I have these unusual items. Would you like them? I would be happy to donate them. And I got a swatch from the jacket that he wore on the night that he died. When he was on stage, he collapsed on stage, or just as he was leaving stage. And I got these wonderful, bizarre items, which is really appropriate for Tiny Tim because he was such a wonderful and bizarre guy.
Now, if someone is a death hag, is it when they actually provide information about anyone who have passed, any stars have passed, or is it just something that anyone could be a death hag?
Sure. I mean, just it's a matter of admitting that you're interested. I mean, now it's all very, it's nothing anymore. But there was a time when I started Finding Death back in '98, which is, I don't know how many years ago that is now, but people, there were no true crime networks. There was no internet yet, or the internet had just started. Find a Grave had just started. So there wasn't, like, I remember Google didn't even happen yet. And if you wanted to use, there was no image searching. So when I was writing these pictures or these stories about like Ava Gabor, I had to find a Green Acres book and I had to scan it in myself. There was no image search. So this is really a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
And I just say there was a time when people used to be ashamed to be interested in this. Now, they would buy their true crime magazines and kind of hide it in the back of their grocery bag. Now there's 24/7 networks, so you don't have to be afraid or to admit it. But back then it was a little bit, it was a bit edgy to say you were interested in that.
I mean, because I wasn't sure if you had to be like involved with something to actually become a death hag, because I think to myself, do I have anything that I could be close to being of that ilk? And the closest I ever got was I dated one of the secretaries of Paisley Park, and so we had seen one of Prince's notorious like 2:30 in the morning shows or whatever. But
wow.
I dated her after she left Paisley Park. But she told the stories of these are true stories that you were not allowed to look at him. You are not allowed, like when he would walk in the room, like Majesty, you'd put your head down and not look directly at him, and the drug abuse and all that stuff that was rampant back in 98, 99. So it was really interesting. And, somewhere there is, in a vault somewhere, there's that elevator footage of him collapsing and dying.
Yeah.
That's
fascinating. And those are kind of, she's confirming with you what we kind of already knew about him. And then you hear these other stories about him with the basketball games, the crazy basketball games that like Charlie Murphy told the story about that. And then you hear about, just the bizarre behavior, which I love. It's just that extreme behavior. How didn't he wear his like high heel boots when he was playing basketball?
Absolutely.
I love that kind of stuff. It's so, the extreme always makes an impression.
And are you interested in this is kind of a weird question. Are you interested in the footage of some of these things, like the Prince footage, other stuff? And I ask that because I thought I was. And then shortly after Michael Jackson passed away, someone leaked out that footage from that Pepsi commercial where he starts on fire. And it's like, oh wow, I'm curious to see what it was. I watch it, and it's far worse than anything that like had been recreated in the Michael Jackson biofilms and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, that. I guess I went too far this time. I think I went a step too far in my interest in these things.
Well, yeah, I guess, I mean, and fair enough, your own boundaries. I've always said that I don't want to see a picture of somebody getting run over by a train. I have no interest in that.
Mhm.
However, if Marilyn Monroe was hit by a train, I'd watch. I would, if I had the opportunity to see because I'm curious. I want to see that. So, I don't want to see people get beheaded. That's the most horrible thing to watch. Innocent people, those terrible things happening to people. But I have seen that, and I regret looking at it. However, if it's somebody that's well known, it's part of the package.
Yeah,
I think, and it could be considered invasion of privacy, but they're public figures, so there's a fine line, and I know I dance all over that line back and forth. So,
and a close one to that also is like the Paul Walker footage of like the crash. I mean, I don't know if there's actually footage of the crash per se, but I mean, you get enough of it.
Yeah, there are photos. I mean, there is a photo that's out there that's definitely of him afterwards in the car still.
It's it's on your page, isn't it?
It probably is.
I think you actually, and folks, once again, if you don't like hearing this type of stuff, this might not be the episode to listen to. But you actually have it where you like out. You outline.
Yeah, well, no, because it's a fact. I mean, we're not dressing it up. It's a death happened.
No, this is where Paul Walker is on.
Yeah, and here he is. If you want to see it, here. But if you don't.
Yeah.
And take responsibility for your own actions. Don't blame it on somebody else if you saw something you don't want to see.
Exactly.
And don't look at it if you don't want to. It doesn't matter to me. But for those that do, I think that it's a worthy. I think it's a curiosity that deserves to be acknowledged.
And there's a lot of us out there. There's just a lot of us out there who really love this stuff. Okay, I know this story, but Karen's asking for you to tell it again, and I think it is a great one. I was just thinking about this, the story of buying D. Martin a beer, and also is his old house in Palm Springs renovated yet?
The house, Troy and I drove past the house probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. And the only thing that's different is, the trees have been, I think 1 or 2 trees are gone. And there's a fence around it now, one of those temporary chain link fences with the green tarp over it. So there was some movement, but not within the house. The house is boarded up a little bit more. I'm pretty sure the house has been sold. And they're going to do something with it. I'm pretty sure those fences there probably because of me. And again, I didn't set out to upset anybody, but I walked around the house with a camera because I want to see D. Martin's house.
Mm-hmm.
And that video has gotten like 2 million views. So yeah, I feel a little guilty, but I was only providing a service, and I thought it was an interesting service. And D. Martin was a nice guy, and I didn't know him, but I met him, and when I first moved to LA in the early 90s, Dean Martin would go to this restaurant called the Hamburger Hamlet, and he would watch the baseball game on Sunday afternoons, and you would set your watch by him. 1 o'clock on Sunday afternoons, he and his a chauffeur or assistant, he would walk in with Dean. Dean would sit down at the table, and an assistant would go and leave, and Dean would have his dinner, or I should say lunch. And I would take people there to see him when my sister came to visit, and we went to go see D. Martin. We never bothered him, but it was just something how cool is this? We get to go see D. Martin when we want to. And but one day I decided I wanted to meet him, and I went alone, and I sat at the bar, and I sat at the one seat at the bar that blocked his table's view of the baseball game. I knew he wouldn't be able to see it. And so I sat there, and he came in and he tapped me on the shoulder after a couple of minutes and asked me if I wouldn't mind moving. And I said, yeah, sure, no problem. And I did. And the bartender came over and said, Mr. Martin would like to buy you a drink. And I got a beer, which I saved the bottle. And I walked over to him, shook his hand, and talked to him for a second. I mentioned Marilyn Monroe. I mentioned Sharon Tate because it was my moral obligation to do that. And, you know, just to get a comment, they were very nice lady, nice women, or something to that effect. There was nothing of any depth to it, but it was just my, you know, my moral obligation to mention those two names with Dean Martin. And he was terrific. So, you know, now I have that story, and the beer bottle.
And I don't think it is hyperbole to say that they don't have them like him anymore, right? I mean, I think especially based on your own experience, that there aren't people. There's nice people out there, nice stars. I understand that, but that is truly a different era altogether. That doesn't exist anymore.
They had a track record. They've been around for a really long time. They had, you know, hit movies. They had recordings that we knew. And, you know, the movies, MGM was kicking out, 4 or 8 movies a year, or, you know, or one a month or something, or one every 2 weeks. I don't know. We weren't inundated. We didn't have 800 channels. We didn't have, you know, channels desperately pumping out more and more garbage or shows or whatever, and 25,000 movie studios that are always making movies. And we didn't get foreign films. Foreign films were like at one theater, and now they're that you know, the crazy art films or something. So it's all different. We have so much information, and there's not a lot of quality information or projects that and there's a lot of quality that we don't see, you know, which is unfortunate. But the personalities just don't really shine through anymore. They're just actors, and they're talented, and they look pretty, and they look great, but just they don't have the charm or something. That's the individuality.
Yeah, it's very different. And I mean, I suppose that people who are younger are going to look at, you know, down the line, they will have some complaints about the next era of stars.
God, what can that be? You know what's going to be AI, isn't it? It's just going to be not real people.
Okay.
So yeah, that's that. Because where else can it go from here? But that.
I was thinking, Dean Martin to me still is the epitome of cool. It just really is. And I think about, and of course I can't think of the name of the spy films he did in the 60s. The
Matt Helm movies.
Matt Helm movies. God, they're good. I mean, so good I can't remember the name of them, obviously, but they are really, it's a lot of fun. It's everything that I've seen him in has been, I really enjoy. Now let's see here. Got some low-hanging fruit here that I'm not sure if you like to answer or not. But I mean, why not ask? Who's the worst celebrity you've ever met? Right.
Well, I mean, that's if I was more prepared, I could probably think of somebody better. But the one that comes to mind the most or the quickest is Billy Zane, and that's, you know, he's another one that I just think he's a dick, and he was a dick. Yeah, no, he's a total dick, and to me a couple of times, not just once. So, and other people I know. So yeah, he's just not a nice person. Just definitely not cool.
You know, and getting back real fast to the like the Dean Martin thing, do you think, I mean, especially you're in the hub of it, so to speak, do you think that, were you ever surprised with how easy it was to have interactions with some of these stars back in the day?
In retrospect, yeah, certainly. You know, we were able to, I mean, you could go to backstage doors. You know, when Larry King was doing his show, it was live. So you could drive over to the theater and to the building and see the people that were coming out if you wanted to meet them. You know, you could meet people backstage at plays, what they were doing. I met a ton of people that way. And I was fortunate enough to be involved in television for a while when I lived in England. So I was able to meet a lot of people that way. Things are different now. I remember back in the 90s when I first moved to LA, we would go garbage picking at celebrities' houses. I never claimed to be classy in any way, so I really don't care. I gave up defending myself a long time ago too, because I just figured, you know, you don't like me, that's cool. Yeah. But we used to go garbage picking, and and that one time I hopped over Jimmy Stewart's house, and I was like crawling around in his garden because I just wanted to see it. And you know, it was innocent. It really was. Honestly, we meant nothing. You know, we were. But today, that'd be a whole different thing. I'd be taking my life in my hands. So it was, they were magic. The celebrities were magic, and to find them being real people was fascinating to me.
And I'm sure one of the things that probably surprised you the most, I mean, I just kind of get this from being outside the circle, is how, some might just be, and not even like the Billy Zane sort of thing, but some might just be very, would be very upset to find you going through their trash. Well,
sure.
Others might be like, I have some more in the house. You want me to bring you some more trash? Like, totally surprise you with that.
Yeah, I doubt a lot of people would do that. But I remember the National Enquirer would do the same thing. They just, here's the Reagan's garbage, and they went and grabbed a garbage bag, and they just photographed everything that was in the garbage. I mean, it's just people's reality. They're these superstars or these mega personalities or royalty. The fact that they're real people is fascinating. I couldn't go. It's fascinating. So it's sad, it's tacky, but there you are.
I don't think it's tacky at all. I'm reading people who's posting in here that and I don't know if they got it from you, that I cherish my tile from Jane Mansfield's heart-shaped pool, because that is a connection, isn't it? And it's a connection you wouldn't otherwise have with someone that you really love their work and want to have something to remember them by.
Yeah.
It's no different than when my parents passed, that I have stuff of theirs that I want to hold on to because they're not there anymore.
Yeah, Jane Mansfield was a different animal altogether, but yes, she was just the definition over the top, and we were lucky enough to own several things of Jane's house, and I was lucky enough to stand in the heart-shaped pool. The famous heart-shaped pool, which was actually a heart-shaped hole in the ground at that point, but I was still there. And yeah, it's that's why I'll always scramble over a wall and grab a brick or something like that. That's tangible. That's something you can hold in your hand. That I don't know. It's important. It's important. It's history.
And you're not stealing Rosebud. You're taking a brick.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I mean, it has a connection to people like us, but it's at the end of the day, you're not committing federal crimes.
Yeah, well, yeah, right. It's just a lot of junk to some people, but all in one room, that makes it more fun. You can't take it too seriously. I mean, I have a cigarette butt that was Carrie Fisher's. I mean, I knew Carrie Fisher, and but for some reason I kept the cigarette butt, and I have it on a little pedestal with a little pin light on it. It's outrageous, it's ridiculous, and it's silly, and I think it's funny.
That is funny. Okay, let's do this. Let's go ahead and take our next break. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Scott Michaels. If you have questions for him, keep putting them into the chat. I will have some of my own questions I'm going to ask too. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. This Wednesday on GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun, tune in for one-question readings with the highly acclaimed psychic medium, Refined Divine, who can answer questions about love, life, and connecting with past loved ones. Get a potentially life-changing reading by calling.
I can answer the question I've had all my life.
Delve into the exceptional talents of Refined Divine at refinedivine.com and experience her live Wednesday at 10 p.m. for psychic medium Refined Divine on GhostBox Radio. Greg Bakun here. I've told you about the out-of-the-world roast beef sandwiches at Maverick's Real Roast Beef, but I haven't told you about their Philly steak sandwiches, turkey bacon avocado sandwich, BLT, crispy chicken, fish sandwiches, brisket, or pulled pork. Okay, you get the idea. They make a lot of delicious food to the same standard as their famous roast beef sandwiches, and now I'm starving. I'm going to go to Maverick's Real Roast Beef off Lexington and Roseville, and you need to go too. Check out their menu at mavericksbeef.com.
Reach your highest level of consciousness and well-being with MetamorphosisConnections.com. MetamorphosisConnections.com is an online directory of the best holistic and metaphysical practitioners to help you make your most informed choices. You can search MetamorphosisConnections.com for classes, events, wellness and life coaches, plus metaphysical products and shops. You can also search for a wide array of healers from all modalities, including EFT, sound healing, energy healing, light therapy, ancestral healing, shamanic healing, reflexology, past life regressions, hypnotherapy, yoga, and more. And if you're not sure where to start, the search feature on MetamorphosisConnections.com is tailored to help both those who know what they are looking for and those who are just starting. Come explore the possibilities for your higher self by visiting MetamorphosisConnections.com. Their experienced practitioners can guide both beginners and those that are already on their spiritual journey. That's metamorphosisconnection.com, your link to direct you on your spiritual transformation.
And join me tomorrow on GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun, as I'm going to have on Witch Jody. You just heard her spots from Midwest Witchery and Healing. We're going to be talking about all sorts of witchery stuff. We're going to be talking also about her being a Salem witch, as well as talking about some big plans we have to broadcast on Halloween this year. It's going to be very exciting. Wednesday, we're going to be talking with A&E ghost hunter Daryl Marston, as we're going to be talking about his new book. Well, it was new at the time I originally asked him to be on the show, but then there's been a number of things, not because of him, but because of me, that delayed his appearance. But his book, The Horrors of the House of Wills, is out. We're going to be talking about that. It's going to be a great conversation. Thursday, we're going to have C.L. Thomas. We're going to be talking about her new book, Dancing with Demons, A Paranormal Encounter. And then Friday, it's Friday the 13th. So we're going to be talking superstitions. And for that, we have D.R. McElroy. We're going to talk about her book, Superstitions, A Handbook of Folklore, Myths, and Legends. It's going to be a great week. And I am very excited to have on Mr. Scott Michaels. We've been talking about all things about celebrity deaths. We've been talking about, just some really great stories as well. And, the one thing that always sticks out in my mind, Scott, is and I haven't been on your YouTube page lately, but your video that you did showing some sort of behind the scenes stuff with Anthony Bourdain, and talking about, and talking about him being very clear about certain things that he's heard about in certain hotels and stuff. And, you don't know, you're just making putting it out there. If anyone wants to think that way about if what he was talking about in that video was any indication of what happened to him, and why he took his own life. And I know that there's a lot of different pieces to that, and I think more has come out since then. But I thought it was a very interesting piece that you put out there.
Yeah, Anthony Bourdain was a really nice guy. I mean, honest to God, I didn't know who he was, and the production company were really trying to pin me down to do this show, which was called
The Layover.
Yes, The Layover.
One of the worst premises for television ever, I think.
Well, they told me there's this guy. They must have said Anthony Bourdain, but they said he really wants to do your tour, and I said, well, I get asked to do these shows all the time, and real princesses of something, and blind date this, and so I have no time for it, because I know there's never any compensation, and it ends up being a really long, exhausting process. So I usually just don't do them. And they were really persistent. I said, I can't do it the day you want to. Can you do Saturday? No, I can't do Saturday. I'll give you an hour on Friday. And it turned out to be one of the most sort of important things publicity wise that I ever did. But Anthony Bourdain is a legend, and he during the tour, of all the tours in LA, he's never done tours, and any of his programs, he wanted to do my tour.
Yep.
And during the tour, we started talking about different celebrities and how they died, and he said point blank, "Is there any autoerotic asphyxiation on this tour?" And I said, "Yes, there is." And he said, "That's what I'm talking about." Yep. So, take it or leave it. I don't care what. There's the information. I'm just repeating it. In fact, I didn't repeat it. He repeated it in my video. And there's the speculation that that's indeed what happened in that Paris hotel room. I can only tell you what I heard, and I thought that was pretty interesting.
I agree. I thought that was very interesting as well. What I didn't realize is that you have a piece of Anne H's car.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sometimes I take things from places. They're considered garbage. And
right.
Sometimes I go, maybe, in retrospect. But it's still history, but it's a bit present, and it's a bit horrific. But it is. It just is. And we've all seen it. We've also heard about the accident. But it deserves to be seen, I think. So, yeah, I did go to the accident scene, did walk all the way through it. I found a piece of her car, and it was distinctive color. And I have it. Yeah. And one day it'll be on display for everyone to see. I guess that's how I defend my actions now.
Well, and I would agree with you. I mean, if otherwise it would be thrown out or put some. I mean, I totally agree that you should have it. If anyone should have it, it's you, actually.
Yeah, I get a lot of flack for things. And for instance, very recently, the door from the Tate House on Cielo Drive, where the quote Manson murders occurred, went up for auction at Julian's. And I did a story about the door and about the house and about the people that had been in that house and the people that claimed they should have been there the night of the murders. And the comments are like, that should be destroyed. Get rid of it. That should be destroyed. And I understand that. However, I will also say these things are our Dealey Plaza. These things are our Ford Theater where President Lincoln was killed. I said Jane Mansfield's son. I introduced myself to him and I said to him, I own the car, the Buick. And he was, he visually, he stepped back like he was really shocked. He says, I don't want anything to do with you. And I said, no, I don't blame you. I just want to let you know I have this. It's going on display. He said, well, isn't that morbid? And I said, yes, I suppose it is. But it's not that we are making fun of your mother. Your mother was very important in Hollywood. And it's all about Hollywood history. And at the end of the conversation, he smiled and he shook my hand. He said, I will not give you my blessings, but thank you for letting me know. So there's an understanding that they were superheroes or they were our royalty, Hollywood royalty. And, like it or not, I just say, don't go. You don't want to see it, don't do it. If you either get what I do or you really, really don't.
Right. And have you ever turned anyone around from going from no, thank you, whatever, to, okay, I get it. And now I'm interested a little bit more. And I don't mean like the everyday person like myself, but I mean someone of some notoriety to like, such as Sharon Tate's son or whatever.
Well, I mean, I knew Deborah Tate, Sharon's sister, and Sharon Tate's sister knew, I became friendly with her for a while. And in fact, when I first introduced myself, because I had a tour based solely on the Tate LaBianca murders, the Helter Skelter tour. And, I exploit people. It's a really crude way to do it, but I do at the end of the day. It's like anyone that writes a book. It's like anyone that makes a documentary. You are exploiting things. And when I met Deborah Tate, I went up to her and I said, my name is Scott Michaels. And I held out my hand. She goes, I know who you are. And I thought, oh, here it comes. And she goes, I'm not going to shake your hand, but I will hug you. And she gave me a hug. It's like, this is a girl who knows, the woman who knows everything about what I do. So it surprises me, but then that's a whole different realm of famous and infamous, when you're talking about that particular case.
Right.
But and she's become so desensitized about the attention. But I don't know. I can't think of too many situations where I felt that I turned somebody's opinion around about what I do. I know some people can just begrudgingly see why I do what I do. Sure. So yeah.
Now, Jan had said that I have a piece of Sharon's fireplace that I got from Scott a couple of years ago and still haven't opened the package to actually handle it because I'm too creeped out by it.
I get it. Totally. I always say, we have so many bizarre things, in one room, I will have, a tile from the pool Brian Jones drowned in, a piece of John Denver's airplane, the bolts from the light post that Paul Walker hit when he was killed, crime scene tape from O.J. Simpson, a piece of the floor from Bobby Kennedy where he was assassinated, bricks from the Ambassador Hotel, the entire Jane Mansfield car, all in one room. So yeah, there's going to be some stuff banging around in there, but we've always been very kind and respectful to the people. When we walk in, everyone that walked in, we never even had to, tell the staff. It was never anything to like, when you do this, but everyone would go, hello, everybody, hope you're well. And, we holy water, sage, the whole bit, we will always be respectful of these things. And I say, as long as you're not, defiling them somehow, and maybe, I just feel like you treat them well and there's not going to be a problem. You can coexist.
We have about 4 minutes or so left. Have you ever? It would be amazing to do something like as you know what this stuff is because you've been on Ghost Adventures and stuff. Like bring a spirit box if you haven't already, and seeing if there's any sort of reaction or anything, any sort of conversation or anything from there? Or is that an area that you're not interested in exploring?
Well, I'm interested enough. I mean, I've been on several investigations, and I've had several occurrences.
Yeah.
I'm not one to anxiously believe, like the Ghost Adventures crew. I mean, I enjoy doing that show. I've done it a few times, but I do know that they are like, one time we were walking and my foot, like my ankle cracked or something like that. And they about lost their shit. They all whip around with their cameras and everything, like, and it was just like, I could have cracked my thumb or my knuckle. I'm not anxious to believe things, but there are some things that are just not mistakable. There are some messages that you get, and I've seen it, I've heard it, and I've experienced it. And but I'm not a paranormal investigator. In fact, in the shop, we only ever had one investigation ever. I wouldn't let anyone in because I think it's kind of disrespectful in a way. But we did. My friend Bridget Marquardt, who had the ghost, the girl next door, the Playboy model, ghost. Sorry, she just finished her podcast. But anyway, Bridget I let her do a podcast for her show in there once, an investigation. But I don't know. I don't think those things should be. I'm trying to use a nice word. I don't think it should be trifled with.
Yeah.
However,
yeah.
I think their investigations are great.
Perhaps with purpose, right?
Yeah, and be respectful. Everyone's curious, but I've seen people just go, come on out here, whoever you are, show yourself, and it's like, be careful what you wish for. You don't know what you're
Totally.
saying.
Totally. Now, we just have a couple minutes left, but I have to think. Do you have any of the original Hollywood sign? I would think if anyone does, like I can imagine, like you have like the whole H in your house.
No, I do have I've got this right over here. I don't want to go off camera, but I do, and it's about this big. And literally a part of the original H from the first. I can get it if you want.
No, I know. I just think it's funny that I just picked H, and you that's what you have, and which is also what Peg Anwhistle jumped from, right?
That's right. Yeah. September 16th, 1932.
It was from
the only person to have ever jumped off the Hollywood sign. People say, "Oh, they do that all the time." No, it's only once there's been a suicide off the Hollywood sign.
That is crazy. I mean, that's a whole other area that I find so fascinating is the Hollywood sign itself and the history about it and everything else. Just so much. There's so much out there.
Yeah, it's a fascinating place, and I miss living there. But when I go back, I'm happy to leave when I do.
I bet
we left at a good time. I was in business for 16 years. I've been doing the sightseeing business since 1993, and in LA. And it's a much slower pace where I live right now. I'm in the desert near Palm Springs.
Nice.
And it's going from one extreme to the other. I like being busy. I like the vibe. But I'm glad to leave when I go to LA. I'm happy to be there, but really happy to leave.
I bet. Now, right now, to see current content would be going to the Dearly Departed YouTube channel.
That's right. Yeah, Dearly Departed Tours on YouTube. Look up Scott Michaels or Dearly Departed Tours, and yeah, that's my career now. Since the business shut down, thankfully I was able to get another career, and it's a lot of fun putting these videos together. It's virtual sightseeing,
and they are really good videos. If you want to check it out, please do so. Scott Michaels, I really appreciate you coming on. I hope that you consider coming on again at some point because this was a really great conversation, and we didn't really even talk about a whole lot, I feel like.
No, I had fun, Greg. I thank you for asking.
Absolutely, and we'll stay in touch about that. Everyone, join me tomorrow as we have on Witch Jody. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.